You're listening to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Sam Pollard, award-winning director and producer and editor of many things, many great films. But as we're already discussed, we're talking about MLK FBI, theatrical release on January 15th, which is Dr. King's birthday and just days before the official holiday that is commemorated for him in the U.S. Why make this film now, Sam?
Well, I would like to say, honestly, to you, Matthew, that I made this film because we knew that it would resonate with the times today.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, Ben Hadine and I, the producer of the film, had just finished another wonderful documentary, if I do say so myself, titled Two Trains Running. Right. And we were looking for a new project in 2017. So Ben, who's a real sort of civil rights buff, just read Dave Garrow's book about Dr. King and the FBI. And he sent me a copy. And he said, Sam, I think this is our next film, to take a look at the relationship between the FBI and Dr. King. So I read the book, and I was very familiar with David Garrow because he had been one of our major consultants when I worked on Eyes on the Prize too. And so I read the book, and I called Ben, I think 2 days later. I said, you're absolutely right. This is our next film. This will be, I think, a good deep dive. Because I'm at this stage in my career where I just don't want to do what I call sort of a survey film about anything or anybody. I want to be able to dig into it like an anthropologist, an archaeologist, really, and to really look at the pros and cons, the nuances of human beings and different institutions. So by taking on this film, I felt there was a great opportunity to dig into who Dr. King was, dig into Hoover, dig into the FBI. And so that was the real attraction to the project. Now, who knew that 2020 would be such a monumental year in world history, with the pandemic, with the deaths of people like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and the Black Lives Matter movement taking hold not only in America, but all over the world. Who knew that our film would be a part of this sort of zeitgeist? So, it's sort of like it just two things coming together that we weren't aware would happen.
I mean, I had this down as a question to ask you later, but I'll ask it now since we're on it. I mean, as a documentarian, I would say you're a historian as well in what you do.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, great. I'm glad we agree on this. I mean, you go into 2020, as you say, with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd. Does it feel like here we go again? 2020 looks a lot like 1968. I mean, is that...
From my perspective, it absolutely does. 2020 does feel like 1968. And it's interesting to me, Matthew, that I was 18 years old when Dr. King was assassinated and Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And probably because of my youth, the impact of that year didn't hit me until years later. But 2020 has really hit me. I'm a much older human being, maybe matured to a level where the nuances and the complexities of life are so much more in my face and so real to me now that this particular year, 2020, will resonate probably even more for me than 68 did. Because I was a young man then. I understood what was happening, but I don't think the impact of it had resonated like what's happened in 2020 has resonated with me.
It's a very interesting perspective as someone who's definitely middle-aged. I will attest. I mean, when you're 18, things are so black and white, aren't they?
Exactly.
And there's something good about that. It's good. I mean, I'm glad there's 18-year-olds out there who can feel that way. But then at the same time, when you get older, it's kind of like, well, things are never completely just so black and white, are they?
That's exactly how you see life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly how I saw life in 68. Things were pretty black and white to me. I always say the three big emotional impacts that happened to me in the 60s was in November 22nd, 1963. I'm sitting in my junior high school classroom, and my teacher comes in and says, school will be closed today because the president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, has just been shot in Dallas.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that a president of the United States could be shot. It was like, what?
Yeah.
And then 2 days after my birthday, April 4th, 1968, I'm sitting at home and the news comes on that Martin Luther King had just been shot in Memphis. Again, I'm like flummoxed. And then 3 months later, almost 3 months later, Bobby Kennedy is killed in California. I mean, I couldn't believe that this was happening in America, but somehow the impact of that, it didn't have the same kind of resonance that this 2020 has had on me as a middle-aged man with grandchildren and grown adult children, and looking at the world in a more complex and nuanced way.